Obviously, it's no secret what has been occurring here in the United States of America for those of you that are abroad and maybe are not as close to the situation, but here in the States, it's pretty insane right now. And I typically stay away from anything that could have political ramifications, issues, challenges. But then I thought about it a lot and I realized how much on this show specifically we talk about mainly feminism, and feminism is a part of the liberal ideology that they're trying to quite literally shove down people's throats. And I would argue that that is in about its most present form here in America and even around the world today, right now. But rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, man. I purposely took a lot of time to not come on the air and talk about this for a lot of reasons. First off, out of respect to the situation, to the family, and to everybody involved, it's incredibly terrible. Secondly, I would say that there's a lot of people that are wanting to be right about what happened and motives and intentions and why and all these things. And I wanted to take time and just see what every sort of media outlet has been saying, whether that's right wing, left wing, down the middle. I don't even know if that exists anymore, but just kind of seeing even what creators are saying and everyone in the space as well. And I want to take a different angle on this reaction and my reaction to the assassination of Charlie Kirk today, because I talked about this at the end of the last episode we did. I think it was episode 130, 129. I should probably know that. But our most recent episode before this video episode that you're watching, listening to, dropped. And I talk about at the end of it, I actually probably need to find this out. So give me 1 second. I think that it's episode 130. Episode 130. So at the end of that episode, for those of you that caught it, and if you didn't catch it, I'm going to refresh your memory. I talked about getting too close to the sun on certain issues. And on this show, I talk about it specifically where we cover feminism and how it's really made a lot of things challenging in the world, specifically dating with men and women. And I would argue that feminism has hurt the very people, women, that it has, I guess, initially tried to help or push forward. And we're seeing that in grand scales here, especially in the States. And what I said was when you get too close to the sun, they will try to throw investigations against you or launch investigations at you or try to take your money. They will target you and ultimately kill you. So that episode was released on, I think, September 8th, and Charlie Kirk died 2 days later, was killed, assassinated 2 days later. And it's really weird how, like, I was literally just talking about this, and boom. Um, am I surprised? No. Why do I say that? As many of you know, he was one of the most powerful people in the conservative movement in allowing people to have freedom of speech, but freedom of debate. And the thing about America that's so interesting for those of you that are abroad is that we have two really, really important amendments: First Amendment and Second Amendment. The First Amendment in our country is the right to freedom of speech. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Now, you cannot have the right to free speech in the First Amendment without the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. When our country was founded hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the reason why this was set out is because who we were free of and who we became free of. So, in which where we were, Britain, the UK, etc., whatever you want to call it, obviously, the British regime, the British rule, we didn't have freedom of speech. And funny enough, they still don't. But we were free of that. We sailed here, we landed here. The first two things that they thought to do to implement: freedom of speech and the right to be able to defend that speech in terms of the right to bear arms, the right to defend our speech. And obviously, now we really understand this even better than before, that here in America, we don't have freedom of speech. There are certain topics you cannot talk about, especially here on the air. You just can't do it for the very reason of you'll become a target. They will want to kill you. And there are deeper entities that are involved in running our world than what you may know to be a president or a vice president or the Supreme Court. And yes, they have tons of power, but the true power of where things live, I would argue you can't see. And even if you read in between the lines, you're still going to have to put that puzzle together. And there's still a lot of what ifs and who and where and what and when. And that's just the nature of what this country is right now. But I would, and I want to touch on this because I just having seen the reaction from everybody and how terrible this has been. We don't have a political issue here in America. We have a humanitarian issue. What I mean by that is the amount of people that are celebrating this, that are saying things like, he got what he deserved, he had it coming. I've seen another really low IQ one, which is, well, the gun rights that he advocated for effectively got him killed. It's just, again, more low IQ and inconsistent behavior from a part of our country that is just not very mentally okay. I could go a million different routes with the specific one on gun control because that is really interesting. Let's just say, okay, they have the gun control. Everybody forfeits their guns, which will never happen. The government goes door to door. You have to hand over your guns. Cool. You do realize that this individual still has that weapon, correct? You do understand that he would have some ability to hide it, obviously, or get it from somewhere else, because the black market in our country on illegal guns is an epidemic in itself. So if you take the guns away from the people that follow the laws, now they can't defend or protect themselves against the people who aren't going to follow them anyway. And this has been a very fundamental part of the issue. And I purposely don't touch politics or things like that. But if you just break it down from a critical thinking lens and some bit of an IQ perspective, you understand that, okay, let's say you take the guns away from people and this is a gun control issue and this is why he was killed, or a part of why he was killed. You do realize that kid still probably is able to have that specific gun or get a gun similar. Okay, he's still on the roof. Now you have a bunch of people below him that, okay, well, you took their guns. They don't have the ability to defend themselves. So if he decides to just start taking out people near Charlie, people in the crowd, how are they going to defend themselves? That's what I mean when I talk about these issues very specifically, which I don't typically do. And for those of you that have followed me very closely for a very long time, some of you know that I used to have a political show. You can't find that show anywhere on the internet on purpose. There's a reason for that. It got scrubbed. And I had a really tough and heart to heart conversation with someone when that show had started, because this was even before what the times are now. But that person, let's just say, has some power and understands how the world works and understands where things are going and have gone now. And he was 100% accurate into what it's been. So that's why we're kind of a little bit touchy on the subject. But we have a humanitarian problem here in America. This is not a right versus left, left versus right. We have a mental health and humanitarian problem here in America. The fact that anybody that is saying, hey, you know what? Freedom of speech, freedom of debate. Come sit here, talk to me on this mic. You'll have a mic, I'll have a mic. Let's engage in dialogue. The fact that that is considered controversial, that is considered any ist in the book, any whatever certain people are classifying it as, is a true problem, and probably one of the worst problems that we can have. Because if you don't have freedom of speech, you have no freedom at all. Let me say it again. If you don't have freedom of speech, you have no freedom at all. And the problem is with the side that is cheering for this, the side that has been so happy that this happened and is making such disgusting comments about it. You're really seeing, and I've said this for a long time, even privately, but I'll say it publicly now too, they don't really value any other life other than their own, and their own has to believe the liberalism ideology to a T. And if you question it, if you want to have open dialogue about it, you're shunned, you're made fun of, you are ostracized. And the issue is with that side specifically, on the liberalism side, is that they're violent because they can't fight with their ideas, they can't fight with their brains. And that person, and there's reports going around that he actually had debated Charlie before. We don't know that to be true or not yet. But that person couldn't sit there and say, you know what? My worldview is much different than Charlie's. Let me go up to the mic and debate him. Instead, they took the coward's way out and decided to end another man's life for wanting to have the freedom of debate, which I would argue is one of the greatest parts of America, or at least the idea of it has been one of the greatest parts. of America. I mean, I can think about everything in my life and think about in yours too, whether it's sports or even politics or religion, anything. If someone disagrees with you, you kind of want to know why, maybe persuade them, but also hear their side out. You could learn something. You may have to rechange your position, which I would argue happens a lot in our lives. But the humanitarian problem here in America, I would argue, is very far gone. And another thing that I want to say to a lot of you, and I kind of really hate urging for this and pushing for this because I'm the type of person to want to have open dialogue and discussion with anybody that wants to do it. If you know of anybody that has been cheering for this, that has been applauding this, that has celebrated this, you must cut them off. There's no more contact, there's no more communication. There is no room for violence here in America. Period. End of story. There are people that I could vehemently disagree with. Politics, religion, economy, etc. In no way, in no way is it okay to call for violence in taking that person's life or even any sort of violence upon someone that you have disagreements with. And this gets back to what I talk about with liberalism, where they don't have any sort of worldview that is rooted in truth or fact. So what they do is they say, believe what we say or we're going to do damage to you. Whether that is, like I said, investigations, trying to take your money, or trying to quite literally kill you. And that's what unfortunately happened with Charlie Kirk. It's the first political assassination here in America in about 40-ish years. And one of the most gruesome things I think I've ever seen, and probably you've ever seen as well. This really showed people's true colors for what maybe even some of you believed for a while about maybe the extremes of certain ideologies. I mean, I don't know if you would take a percentage of America and say, what's the percent of people that are elated, happy with what happened to Charlie? It feels like, just from the social media angle, that it's 20, 30% just from what the people that are coming out and bragging about it are saying. Who knows about all the people that are being quiet, that are not saying a word, that you may be neighbors with, that you may be friends with, that you may associate with on a daily basis, where they understand ramifications if they come out and celebrate something like this, because it's disgusting, but it's a mental health problem. It truly is. And you just can't associate with people like this. It's unfortunately very far gone. They have to be in their own bubble, and you're seeing it all over America now with the reaction. So it's incredibly terrible. I feel so just like nauseous. Like, I remember when it happened where I was, and someone had told me, hey, Charlie Kirk just got shot. I was like, what? And when I initially heard that, I was like, oh, he's going to live. Like, I just had that because he's such a fighter for what he believed in, for his faith, for his family, and just honestly saving America. I would argue his views, regardless if you agree or disagree, were always rooted in faith. Were always rooted in the nuclear family, providing, protecting for a wife, children, submitting yourself as a man to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and God, and really trying to influence people to be connected to their faith, be connected to their family. And you argue in any sort of period of time in human history, any religion, all of these major religions all follow similar sort of the patriarchal structure of religion and family and children. And that's what he preached a lot. And you can really see now the opposition, which it's not even like worth to try and understand it. But having seen it now play out over the last few years to what it is today, we allowed Instagram reels, TikTok clips, YouTube shorts, all these things that could be rage bait or something that Charlie said, or it wasn't the full thing, right? But that's what the world is right now. That is what social media is. It's all quick and short, and the average attention span of a human has gone down significantly to barely even a few seconds from what it used to be of like 7 to 10 seconds. Like, it's just crazy. So when you see this over and over and over again, and then you have someone that's radicalized to believe in that far wing of liberalism, look what happens. I mean, you are a product of your own environment. I talk about that a lot. And also, we talk about the conditioning of our brains. And think about how many times you're sitting there and scrolling and seeing the same videos, and the algorithm knows what videos you like. It's probably the same thing for this individual that committed one of the most heinous acts I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen an assassination like that in my life. We almost lost President Trump last year by a miracle and saving grace of God. We didn't, but Charlie Kirk was not so lucky. And I obviously thoughts and prayers like aren't even like enough. Like it just doesn't even feel real. It's literally just so surreal still. And liberalism has literally gone down the slippery slope now into the greater. And you just can't reason with it. Like I definitely know some people that maybe had leaned sort of to that side, but even them on this specific assassination are like, yeah, this is crazy. Like we have gone way too far. But if you know people, like I said, that are celebrating this, that are saying we're glad he's dead, all these disgusting things, just remove yourself, don't associate with them, don't talk to them. You just can't do it. And I hate that we've come to a point in our country where I'm urging a lot of you that are just like level headed and have IQ and critical thinking skills to not associate with people. Cause I'm, as you know, one of the most staunch free speech people ever. Like if someone disagrees with the position that I have, then I want to hear why and I want to talk about it and have dialogue and like, let's fix it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to reprogram my brain on something, which by the way happens every single day. That's called evolution, learning, and growing. But getting back to the thing I talk about with clips, I want to mention this before we wrap this. So all these people are seeing clips of Charlie or even someone that you would consider to be controversial, I would argue because of the clips. And then you ask those people, okay, so have you ever actually sat down and listened to Charlie or anyone that has any sort of influence or power, regardless of side? Have you ever sat down and actually listened to them fully speak on something, articulate thoughts, reference things versus just the clickbait and the rage bait that you see on clips? Some people would say, yeah, I have. And those people, I would argue, were the ones that were going up to the mic and actually trying to have a conversation with Charlie. And I do respect that a lot. I really do. But a lot of people were like this individual that committed the assassination, where they were like, you know what? Fuck this guy. We're going to kill him. And unfortunately, that's a huge part of that wing right now. See, the issue is with the liberalism and like the far left. And by the way, I'm an independent. I have been an independent voter for a long time. I think that's very important for context because a lot of you don't know what I am. I'm independent, have been for a while, because I can independently think on certain issues, have critical thinking, and figure out what is best for the future of our country, at least in my view and worldview and everything like that. But the problem is that this individual decided, you know what, fuck you, we're going to kill you because I don't agree with your opinion. And I would argue that that is coming from somewhere. That is radicalized. I would argue in the institution of college. You're seeing a lot of videos come out now of people, students that are recording professors saying that the professors are talking about how they're glad Charlie's dead and it couldn't have happened soon enough. Like craziness. So I wanted to come here after and kind of quite literally touch on that because I hadn't said anything publicly about it or even on my social media, and I try to stay away from it, but this is impossible to stay away from. So I hate to point fingers. I really do, but it's incredibly essential to figuring out the root of our problems and then finding solutions. But I hate to say it, but you could also point the finger at feminism here. Again, it always is the thing that keeps on striking down. Had this shooter not lived in such a femme-centric society, I talk about it a lot, he would have had a better chance of finding a wife, children, a situation in a world in which it was just more normalized as what it used to be. And you wouldn't have people that have these mental health problems like they do today. But when you have feminism and you have the idea of women saying, I don't need a man and I want a career and I want to make my own money, you can make arguments that that's good in balance or in theory. But when you go all the way on that, that essentially takes all these women, which I've talked about before, all these women that are now in that mindset of I don't need a man and I'm going to work and I'm going to make money and blah, blah, blah. That just limits the amount of capable men that you women are going to find attractive. And there's not enough of those men to go around. So that's an argument that I've always had against feminism. And this kid, you could argue for whatever you wanted to make the argument on, that he was just an average person, that went to school, it seemed like had a good grade point average. His mother was bragging about him in videos and different things like that, just a very normal person. But you women would never look at a guy like that because he is not quote unquote on your level. And that whole conversation, I've talked about it a lot, but feminism plays a huge part here. As much as people don't realize it, it does. And that's another angle I wanted to touch on here on this reaction video to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So sad. And when you truly understand and you start to really understand how the world works at its deepest form, its deepest level, its deepest root, you'll notice that you have to retrain your brain on quite literally everything. And if you're not doing that, I'm going to push you to do that, because there could be things that you're today very stubborn on, your views are very stubborn on, and you're not going to change them. But what if information comes out that, I don't know, maybe makes you have to change that view? But the problem is everyone is so deep rooted in their beliefs that it has gone to a point to where we are not safe in a country where you want to have the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. And the other problem is too, is like, if you disagree with the liberalism wing of that ideology, you're a target. I mean, I said it before, I'll say it again as we wrap this. You know, and I talk about in our dating portion of this show a lot when it comes to feminism and equal rights and all of these things that we talk about that play a factor into dating and to career and the workplace and the dynamics between men and women. That makes me a target. Now, I would argue that the feminism thing that I talk about and discuss may not be a top of the list, but it's on the list of things that you absolutely should never go against the grain on, to question, to want to have the freedom of debate on it. Otherwise, they will launch investigations against you, try and kill you, take your money in any sort of a way, set you up, put you in precarious situations, and that's just what it is. So to all of you out there that are watching and listening to this, thank you so much for being here. You are incredibly smart for not going in public and talking about this, and just a really sad time here in America. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Prayers and thoughts and every sort of thing in that ballpark you could think of for his family, for his children that had to watch that. I saw a report that his kids were pretty close when he was assassinated, and it was pretty graphic and visual. And we talk about on the show a lot trauma, and we talk about where our minds are conditioned, especially from an early age, even prior to being able to verbalize thoughts, and to verbalize thoughts in a very conscious and intellectual way. I would argue that it shapes who we are as people. And somewhere along the way with the shooter, there's a lot of wiring off. And it's not just him. There's a huge, huge part of our country that had been given the chance to be put in the situation as the shooter, they would have done the exact same thing. That's a really serious problem. And man, I just, so sad, so incredibly sad. Someone gone too soon, regardless if you agree or disagree. Violence is never okay in any bit of a capacity. Again, if you know people that are advocating for this, that are celebrating this, you must remove yourself, because the slippery slope that has always been talked about as the slippery slope is now in lava, is in the crater. It's about as bad as it can be. And I wish I was here today with some sort of a positive message or a better message, but this is just my honest, real and raw reaction to losing, regardless if you agree or disagree with them, just like a person that was a husband, that was a father, that was trying to just bring family values and faith back to our country. And you see how a lot of people have a real problem with that. That's where we are today, America. And I urge you to continue doing what you're doing, keeping to yourself, not showing your cards to people. That's a huge one. And continuing to pray for Charlie Kirk, for Charlie Kirk's family, everyone that's involved. Real sad time here in America, but that's the episode. I hope all of you have a safe rest of the week. The world's a really dangerous place right now, especially here in America. And I would argue it's just better to keep to yourself, to do your thing. Otherwise, you become a target. And a lot of us have too much to lose to be a target. And Charlie, unfortunately, lost his life and his family lost him, and it's so incredibly sad. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, an absolute legend, someone that will live on for generations and inspire so many young people to want to have those values again because we lost someone really important. All right, everybody. Talk to you later.